The term staffing relates to recruitment, selection, development, training, compensation, and managerial personnel. So talent is definitely something that is always searched by the organization. And yes, if they find the right talent in you, you will be definitely given a place in the organization to perform. We are talking about human resources today as the biggest asset to the organization. Good morning and welcome to the session 6 in unit 3 in the first semester B.B.A. Management of Principles and Practices, where we are going to see a very important topic known as the nature and importance of staffing. Though this is the concluding part of this unit, but then this is the beginning of the human resource concept altogether. Now just have a look into it. The term staffing relates to recruitment, selection, development, training, compensation, and managerial personnel. So when I break down each one of these words, this itself would form a different unit, a different segment in the field of human resource management. But then staffing is the most important thing. Why? Because you're not just going to add people, but you're going to get the right talent to your organization. So it's very important for each one of us to understand why the nature of staffing comes as a critical focus point for the organization. Now, staffing, like any other managerial function, is a duty which is the apex management performs at all times. Is that staffing done only by a HR recruiter? Is staffing done only by a HR manager or by the VP HR or by the CEO? Who does the staffing? To be honest with you, staffing is a function that goes on from the top management to that of the bottom level management, which means to say that the concept of staffing exists at all levels in the organization. So I'm not going to tell that staffing is something that's only related to a particular segment, to a particular vertical, or to a particular section altogether. Staffing is related to each and every activity that happens inside the organization, because you need people at the end of the day to perform the job. Moving forward, in a newly created enterprise, the staffing would come as a third step next to planning and organizing. But in an ongoing enterprise, staffing is a continuous process. Now let's try to understand this concept very clearly. Moment you have decided to start a company, probably staffing is not the first thing that comes to the mind of a CEO or of an entrepreneur. He will think how to plan my organization, how to build my organization, how to put in the different factors together, and then he steps out to bring in the people. But for an organization which is already in existence, which has been doing business for the n number of years, staffing is a continuous process. Staffing is something which keeps on happening. People change jobs for their personal reasons. People move on to new jobs because of different kinds of opportunity that they get to serve. But staffing is something that remains constantly, permanently. It will not change. This function is one thing which will always try to bridge in the gap that is required for the management to perform well. Followed by the nature of staffing. It's an integral part of the human resource management. It facilitates procurement and placement of right people on the right job. Now that's the word I want you to concentrate. Right people on the right job. Now that's what we are looking into it. The right people and right job. What do you mean by that? Is that something called as wrong people, right job, or wrong job and right people? What is that we are trying to make you understand when I use those words? That means to say that there is a set of talent which is existing in each and every human being. But not everybody is the right fit for the job that is being advertised on the papers. There might be a good teacher, but a teacher is not a right fit to be a part of a software organization. There might be a very good software developer. That doesn't mean that he could become a trainer. What we do in organization is that we find the fit. We find that talent that can really match to the need of the organization, need of the job altogether. So at the end of the day, staffing is all about bridging the gap. I keep repeating this word. Why? Because talent has to be en route into the organization. It has to be recruited inside the organization to perform the job. So talent is definitely something that is always searched by the organization. And yes, if they find the right talent in you, you will be definitely given a place in the organization to perform. So always, I believe that staffing is equal to searching for the right talent. Moving further, people-centered. Is staffing people-centered? Is staffing all about people? The answer is yes, no doubts about it, and it is relevant to organization. It's concerned with all categories of personnel. What is the kind of people that you search inside an organization? VP, CEO, GM, director, what is that you typically look into? Do you look into people who are only in the C-suite of the organization? Only the C-level organization? Or do you look for people even at the mid-level or at the junior level? The answer is that we look for everybody inside the organization. We look into those factors that actually make you or enable you to perform inside the organization. Are you a developer? Are you a programmer? You might be an analytical person or you might be a theoretical person. The organization always has its own thought process that starts coming inside. The organization thinks in many forms and format, how we can take a person, mold him, and then put him to the job. So staffing starts up with a lot of factors. It starts looking into different category, whether you are a white collar, a blue collar, or even a person who's just wearing a t-shirt, which means to say that you are an informal kind of person altogether. Now, whatever category you belong to, what we want is an engagement with the organization. It's the right kind of engagement. We don't want you to fit into the organization because there is an opening that was found. We want you to join the organization because we believe that your work of loading, unloading, or your work of performing is really good within us. So that's why we say that this is very, very important. Now, let us talk about this managerial and non-managerial personnel altogether. Now, there are people who have been selected for a particular kind of a role inside the organization. So they perform managerial tasks. What is that managerial task all about? When I say the word managerial task, it is something related to the work function altogether. It is something related to the nature and kind of job that we are talking about. It is something that is related to the activity altogether, the power, the level of position altogether. Now that is why I always say that managerial is not an easy job. It requires a lot of thinking here. The next thing is that when I look at the professionals, when I look at the factors called as professionals like chartered accountant, company secretary, a lawyer, an architect, a doctor, all these kind of professionals are one which are being exclusively looked upon by the organization. Why? Because we have a separate set of selection criteria for them. So when you look into that factor of how people are selected, then automatically we come across different methods to select the right kind of people there. Followed by, staffing is a basic function of management. Every manager is continuously engaged in performing a staffing function. He is actively associated with recruitment, no doubts about it, selection, training, appraisal of his subordinates. This is something which has to do with a manager on a day-to-day basis. For a manager, the biggest challenge is that the team which he has created, rather I would say the team which he has got, will it stay with him for years to come? The answer is no. Let's say today you are a project manager having about 20 professionals under you, working under you. They're all people who are just, young, talented people who are working with you for a project. But this 20 people will not continue to work with you for years to come, for ages to come. They might start seeking better opportunities. There might be a time a person wants to leave the organization due to personal reasons. There might be a time where the person might feel that this organization is not making me happy anymore. I want to switch over. I want to find areas which can make me even more happier, even more productive enough altogether. Then what do? I quit the organization. I start looking out for opportunities. At that point of time, for the manager, it is always a matter of challenge because he has to constantly involve himself in terms of searching for the subordinates. He has to involved in the activity called as staffing. So 24/7 for the manager, staffing is a part and parcel of his regular job description. Whether he is going to recruit people from inside or from outside, or he is going to find out specialists, whether it's going to be a contractual basis, non-contractual basis, he has to be always on the lookout. And that's why I say that recruitment and appraisal are like the two eyes of the manager. You cannot make a decisive judgment saying that one is important, one is not. You need to be on the constant lookout so that you will be able to understand how this process keeps on going. So for example, now let's say that if a manager wants to build a team, an exclusive team for a project, now the first thing that he would be loaded with is the staffing thing. Because unless and until he gets that number settled for his team, he cannot take rest. He has to go back, talk to the HR manager, find out can we bring in a new team, how to take it forward. So all those activities keep on running in his mind. Now these activities are performed by chief executive, departmental managers, every single division as far as possible. So this staffing is something which is ongoing process. See, in the digital age, let me tell you, when you log on to Naukri.com, Monster.com or LinkedIn, you keep on seeing that people are moving from one point to another. You keep on seeing that people are still in search of job. At one point of time, you might ask this question, why is that people still like to move on in their life? But then that is what life is all about. That is what even the organization says. They never want people to just settle down and take retirement inside the same company. We want people to understand whether we can continuously move with it. We can continuously find out opportunities and grow with the organization. So I would always say that this is the activity that you need to think upon, that you need to work upon altogether. Followed by the human skills. The staffing function is concerned with training and development of human resources. Every manager should use the human relations skills in providing guidance and training to the subordinates. So it is mandatory that we start thinking about it. And now when I talk about this, skills and guidance and every moment, this is not going to be something so easy for us to understand, for us to take it forward altogether. This has always been a matter of very big question mark. Why? Because whenever we say that manager has to use a human relations skill, he needs to understand the emotional factors of an employee. He needs to think twice where exactly I can guide my employee, where exactly he needs a holding hand altogether, where exactly I can come forward, pitch in and try to help him to do better. So I would always say that the human relation skills is not going to be easy at all. It's a very big challenge. You need to understand it, you need to build it, and you need to take it forward together. And there are many times what happens here is that manager might feel that he's doing the right thing because that's what the project demands, but then the employee may be hurt because of the decision taken. So at some point of time, how do you select people? What kind of people do you select? How do you do the appraisal for them? Everything matters a long way. Now, human relation skills are also important for performance appraisal, transfer and promotion. We all know that when we talk about these words in Indian context, probably people always think that these are just eyewash. These are just something which is only written on the paper. At the end of the day, people get it done through different means or through a backdoor entry altogether. But let me tell you, in a real organization, forget all this negative talks, forget all this backdoor entry stuff. But what is reality is that every single promotion, appraisal, transfer comes in with some sort of a clause. It comes with some sort of a challenge. For the manager, he has to understand why I need to give you a promotion. Why should I promote this person to the next level? Why should I give him a hike in the salary? Why he needs a transfer? Why he needs to move from one department to the another department? It is not just going to be written on a piece of paper, or it is not just because of a request or because I know you personally. It has to happen because there is a system, there is a process, and one has to go through it, get evaluated, provide enough evidence so that the manager is convinced, the top management is also convinced with the decision that is being taken. So that's why I say that performance has got no shortcuts. You need to perform to tell people that yes, you can move up the ladder, you are a deserving candidate altogether. So for a manager, the word performance appraisal is a very, very important thing, and he needs to worry about it. He needs to work on it so that he is able to get what he exactly wants. Followed by continuous function. As I have told you, if you look into this graph, staffing is just like that continuous function. It just keeps on going. Somewhere, if I'm going to use this mathematical thing, that the X factor, what I'm trying to talk about, that X factor is the human being. Why? Because staffing is all about being continuously performed. It is very, very important. There has to be this continuous recruitment training and organizational activity that keeps on going. Now, this functionality is not something to be taken with the monotonous part of it. This functionality is something where you are now getting to the levels of guidance. You are now getting into the levels of different thought process altogether. Now, many people might question, sir, are we doing this again and again just because it is a part of a system, or just because you have been told to do it, or do you believe that this is just like a religious practice that has been followed? But let me tell you, staffing, recruitment, appraisal, these are not just something to be followed blindfolded. These are to be done because they add some value to the organization in the long run. You make your employees undergo some training, you upskill your employees for certain reasons, for certain levels. Why? Because you believe that they can do it. They will be able to come up. So that's why I always believe that whenever you involve yourself as a manager, training, recruitment, performance appraisal, these are something that is really valuable enough to the organization. These are something which are like the first level of evidence to prove to the organization that you are doing better than yesterday. So as a manager, your primary role function comes in not just by recruiting people to your project, but by guiding them and enabling them to the next level so that they are able to perform even better. So that's why I always say that in a running organization, in an organization of existence, this activity will continue as long as the organization exists. Followed by the importance of staffing. It's an utmost important an organization that all the right kind of people are employed. So I would always say that staffing is more about that right kind of people. When you don't find people who actually match to the attitude, to the beliefs, to the principles of the organization, then probably you are not getting the right kind of people. There is no need for you, or there is no hurry for the organization to just staff up, to just beef up the organization with the head count, and then tomorrow go ahead and publish it on the paper saying that we have recruited 10,000 people. And that is not the need of the organization. That is not actually the vision of the organization. The organization needs right kind of people. So even if I recruit 10 people for my company, I need those 10 people at the right level with the right kind of skill set so that they match to the needs of the organization. So I would always say that whenever the organization takes the time of getting into staffing, they need to be very careful. They need to be understanding on this factor that yes, it will take time for them to get the right kind of person, and you might have to pay more than expected, and there might also be a time there where you have to go ahead with people shortage or on the excess, but still you should be able to perform, you should be able to take on the situation and deliver as per the business expectations altogether. Followed by the benefits. Now, when we talk about the benefits of staffing, we all know that efficient performance of other function, efficient use of technology and other resources, optimum utilization of human resources, human capital, human resources again in terms of motivation and building higher morale. Now, when you go through these benefits, you would see that everywhere the word that is very, very commonly used is human resources. We are talking about human resources today as the biggest asset to the organization. So if you're not able to motivate your employees, you're not able to transfer or transform your human resources to human capital, to the most valuable asset of the organization, then you have failed as an organization to evolve. So I would always say here that staffing actually tries to make the optimum utilization of the human resources. Staffing actually helps in the development of the human capital. Plus, it provides a huge amount of motivation, and it also helps in building up a higher morale. So tomorrow, when a person says that I have been selected by this organization based on these criteria and I have been given this role, it talks about the organization's principles and values. So the role of staffing is not going to be that easy. It involves a lot of thought process. With this, I come to the end of today's session and end of the Unit 3. I hope and believe that all the resources shared through this presentation will be of great value and resource to you, both in terms of practical, also in terms of the concept. In the upcoming classes, we will be seeing about the Unit 4, where we will be talking about the different forms and factors of the management principles, which will be definitely interesting. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful day. Thank you.